Okay, welcome everybody to the May 15th, 2024 regularly scheduled meeting of the Town of Eastham Planning Board. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. I do have to ask, is anybody doing any kind of recording in the audience, either video or audio? No, okay. Good. So, we will begin. There are no real opening statements tonight, so with that, and the hearing is open, we will call case number PB 2024-01 for 15 Beach Plum Lane. This is continued from April 17th, 2024, as shown on map 13, parcel 185, Karen M. Johnson. 2016 revocable trust applicant seeks site plan approval residential pursuant to Eastham zoning bylaw section 7.24 residential lot intensity and section 10.3 site plan approval residential to demolish an existing 704 square foot dwelling and build a new two-story 1,671 square foot dwelling on a lot under 10,000 square feet where proposed addition or expansion of an existing dwelling exceeds 2.5% of the lot area, and/or the site coverage ratio, including addition, is equal to or greater than 15%, and where the site coverage ratio for a new dwelling or addition of an accessory building causes the coverage ratio to be equal to or greater than 15% of the lot area. Good evening. Hi.
Good evening, Mr. Koppelman, and everybody. My name is Ben Zender, and I'm here on behalf of Karen Johnson, who's the property owner, and she's on the screen to my left and your right. Also on the screen is Brad Malo from Ty Bond, formerly Coastal Engineering. So there's been a change of the name of the firm, but he's on here to answer any engineering questions. And behind me to my left is Peter Haig from AD Architects, who prepared and designed the home that's proposed here. So just, first of all, I wanted to thank you. I wasn't available at the last hearing. I had to be up in the Lane Court, and I just couldn't get back in time. So I let your staff know, and I want to thank you for the continuance. But I think it was beneficial because in the meantime, we've been to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the first hearing of the matter. And there was fairly extensive feedback from the Board of Appeals, which is really going to require that we go back and make some changes to both the structure, the structure itself, the decking for the structure, and also, the board is looking for some more particular information on landscape requirements, landscaping proposed, what's being removed. So I'll give you, if you don't mind, just a very brief description of the proposal, and then listen.
Yeah.
And with an understanding that I'm going to be requesting that you allow us to continue the matter so that we can go back and with Karen and Brad and Peter, make some changes to the proposal that will address the zoning board's concerns, and hopefully we'll be able to address your concerns as well.
Do you anticipate that the zoning board will act on this application before next month when we see it, or not?
Our next zoning board meeting is June 6th.
And we're
I think you're after
a couple of weeks later, so.
You're a couple of weeks later, so I'm not entirely sure now, understanding that we have to have our plans in at least a week ahead of time, so I'm not sure that we'll have the plans, in which case we may need to ask for further continuances.
We can do that.
But in a best-case scenario, and also I had offered and have been in communication with one set of abutters immediately adjacent to the property and promised them that I would provide them with the information, as it's ready, so they can look at it and provide some feedback as well. So I'm hopeful that we will meet with the zoning board with completed revised application materials on June 6th and with you at the next hearing.
Perfect.
So that's sort of the overview of procedurally where we are.
Great.
So as you're all aware, this is a residential site plan review under your bylaw. The proposal here, because because the lot is 8,583 square feet, the amount of the increase in the gross floor area of the structure triggers a site plan review. The proposal here is to remove a fairly old single-story structure. As you've seen it, you've walked the site, it's old. And the proposal is a new two-story structure that would have 1,671 square feet of gross floor area, which is under the 1,717 square feet of gross floor area that is the maximum permissible under your new density bylaw. So we're okay in terms of not exceeding the maximum permissible. The structure does involve increasing some existing non-conforming setbacks on the north side and on the south side. There's a new shed proposed on the south side, which will create somewhat of a significant incursion in the south side setback. And I think the elevations and the plans kind of speak for themselves in terms of what we're looking at, so I won't provide any commentary on the architectural style of the house. I think you can see it. I think Mr. Lag has done a good job of identifying where it does and doesn't comport with the standards for a residential site plan approval. I will say that, based on our meeting with the Zoning Board of Appeals, there were certain things that became evident. And it wasn't just one member, it was multiple members had the same concerns with the project. First and foremost, or not first and foremost, but first, there was a concern about the decrease in the setback distance on the north side of the property, where the deck wraps around on the north side. And we're looking at, really removing decking on that side of the house to make that deck less non-conforming. We're still working on where to put the rinse station, but that's one of the things that we're looking at. Another thing that was of concern to the zoning board was there's a proposed shed on the south side of the property. The reason for that shed, if you look at the elevations, was that the angled roof of that shed would tend to draw down the house visually. It had to do with sort of the view of the house from the road, but we understand that the encroachment is something more, a bridge a little bit too far for the zoning board, so we're looking at modifying or removing that shed. And then we listened carefully, the abutters to the south were online, and they expressed a concern that I thought was consistent with some of the members' concerns, which is that this proposed structure has glass of more of a vertical nature on the second floor and going up the stairwell that creates light, would create light if lights were on inside the house. And so we're looking very carefully at addressing that concern of the glass and how it would affect the neighborhood, both in lighting and visual aspects. And finally, there was a concern about privacy expressed by the abutters to the south, and this structure has a number of decks. There's a deck on what I call the water side, the west side. There's a roof deck, and then there are two other decks, one on the south side and one on the east side. And we're looking at ways of addressing both the privacy concerns and the number of decks that are being expressed in this application. The other information that the zoning board really wanted to have is they wanted to have the site staked in advance of their view. We struggled with the fact that we're looking at a fairly significant revision of the plan and what do we stake. So I think if you've been out there, you've seen that we staked what has initially been proposed, because that's what's on the table. And also the zoning board was looking for a landscape plan that identified what's being removed and what's being replaced to address the native planning requirements, to make sure that we're complying with the 6-foot buffer around the property, and to make sure that we do the best that we can to minimize the effect of the project on the abutters. So I'm sorry to just give you a laundry list as opposed to this is why we love our project. But I always tell my clients, you go to the first hearing to listen, not to talk. So that's essentially our presentation, and I'm here with Peter and Brad and Karen to address any questions you have, and I'll be taking some fairly extensive notes as to what your concerns are, and then requesting a continuance. And thank you for your time, as always.
Okay. It's interesting because the zoning board issues reflect my mind when I looked at this. It is fairly intensive use of the lot, and I think what you've discovered is that as a result of appeasing perhaps the ZBA, the site coverage, which includes decks and everything else, is going to go down in terms of the intensity. When you visually look at this proposal and look at the whole area of the lot, you're almost half the lot's getting covered with something. And I think if you're pulling off the deck to the north and you're shrinking that in some way, I think that's a good thing. Initially, I thought, before I got out to the site, that this was going to be massive impact, but I don't feel that. It's interesting.
I agree, Mr. Coleman.
Because the house itself, size-wise, is bigger than the existing, but when you look at it from the street, it's not that much wide, it's no wider, it seems, and it is taller. I think your main impact is the height, which you're allowed to do by zoning. So when I looked at it initially, I did too concerned with the light shed from the big windows, and for the 3 decks, you actually have decks on first, second, and third, the roof. And, but candidly, it's an interesting design, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to fellow board members. We're at informal. We're going to be continuing this to the next month. Having said that, I think it's appropriate that Mr. Zender asked for input. He's going to appease some of the zoning issues. And from a planning standpoint, I think he's entitled to get some feedback, so we don't do this 4 times, maybe only 3. So Peter, do you have any comments?
No
on this?
comments.
Okay. Brian? Dave?
I do have a comment. Are you doing a landscape plan for the zoning board?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll get that
Yeah, that'll be
eventually.
submitted to you as well.
Because it's like, you're taking down a dozen trees, and I realize a lot of the trees are not very good, so I can understand that, but I'd like to know what's gonna happen.
We will be providing that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Rob?
In the landscaping plan, are you planning on putting I know the abutting neighbor on the other side of the shared walkway to the beach has a fence. Are you including possibly a fence on
No.
your side? Okay, so, because the property will just kind of fall out into that walkway.
And that walkway is just, that walkway is pretty heavily used. I mean, it's the way to the beach. And just so you know, Karen herself has a home on Bayberry, that, they use the walkway to get
Right.
back and forth, for her family to get back and forth. And so there's already a fence on the abutting property. If they were to put a fence up there, it would create a tunnel, and they don't really want to do that.
Okay, but you'll
So-
try to do something with plants and stuff to, only because from one standpoint, the property itself is going to have an incredible advantage and view of everybody else's property, especially when you're on that 3rd floor.
Right.
Being able to look into everybody else's backyard and everybody else's house. So now, if they're out on their decks outside, everybody's walking by to the beach. I mean, it's kind of like their privacy and the other people's privacy of what's going on. So I just, I was concerned about that, because the envelope is right to the edges,
I think, Ms. Young, you've identified 2 issues. One is, how does this project affect the privacy of the immediate abutters? Well, actually 3. 2, how does it affect the privacy of people walking up and down the pathway, which I don't think people walking up and down the path have an expectation of any privacy. They're walking through somebody's property. And the 3rd is, how does it affect the property of Karen and how she uses her property? So I think she's made the choice, and we'll flesh this out. I think she's made the choice that she likes the activity of the people coming through, that's a neighborhood. She's not looking to try to protect herself from that. I'm not sure that there's really a way to screen, for example, a view, as you would with any roof deck, of a view into someone else's yard. I mean, I don't think anyone has an interest in looking into other people's homes, but I think the purpose for the roof deck is to look at the bay, which, if you were at the house, you would see that there is, in fact, a view of the water even from the ground level, when you're there. So, but we'll look at that question. I think it's an interesting question that the zoning board didn't raise.
Yeah, and the same thing with the roof deck, some type of, I don't know, whether you put plants up there or whatever, it's a matter of, I just recently sold a property on Short Left, that has a rooftop deck, and, the houses around it, they can't really look down into it. This, you're gonna have
Yep.
An incredible view of everybody else's backyard, and especially your neighbors, so.
Well, and also, I think, in looking at the plan, especially when you look at the elevations, I think primarily the concern here is, how does this affect the view of the abutters to the south? I mean, there's a deck on the 2nd floor, and there's a number of decks on the 2nd floor, there's actually 3, any of which would provide a view of the abutter to the south. And so what we're looking at is ways to address that through screening, limiting access to decks and things like that. So the roof deck we're looking at, and we'll certainly look at ways to manage the view from that.
Right.
If we can. But
Can I interject on this notion of the
it's Karen Johnson.
Can you hear me? Hi.
Yes.
I'm the homeowner of 15 Bayberry and 15 Beach Plum that we're discussing. And if you've seen my place on 15 Bayberry, I was fortunate to find Laura Kelly of Littlefield Landscape. She's brilliant at landscape design and using native plantings and really finding things that really love the environment. And she's very careful about those things. And her wheels are already turning about what we can do to naturally have a border between the house and that path for both of the reasons that you address. So I think you'd be happy with that. In terms of the trees, like you said, there's a lot of trees that sadly have been outgrown in the neighborhood. They're really tall. They're one hurricane away from dipping. But I am of the viewpoint that I want to keep anything in there that I can to help shield the house, screen the house from the street, from the neighbors, from the path. So that's where I'm coming from. And if you've worked with Laura or seen her designs before, I think I'd hope you'd agree that she's very conscientious, also very clever with container plantings. So on decks and things, she's really clever with very pretty and native ways to get the job done to everybody's satisfaction, we hope. Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Kevin?
At the risk of being a little bit repetitive of what Rob had just said, also looking at some of the zoning board notes, just to share some of the concerns. One is the number of decks and it sort of surrounds the house, but particularly the roof deck. I know some communities, more up in the city, have pretty strict regulations on them, and the biggest issue there that they try to deal with is privacy. View of the bay, I'm sure would be great, which would be wonderful. I don't know how you would restrict just to that side, but the north, the east, the south, you can look anywhere, and some folks may have some issues with that, and I think we have to protect against that as best we can. Similar to the windows, again, this is old news, but one of the elevations in particular, the south elevation and the east elevation in particular, I know that there's double hung windows through the middle of it, but there's also windows on top and windows down below, that if you just turn on the light in that area within the house, you've got 12 panes of glass shining the light out. And that's very unique. It would be the only house in that neighborhood that does that too.
Right.
Getting natural light inside the house is typically something that people like to get, so I understand that. But the light does go out at nighttime, and whether any design changes can be made to sort of minimize that a little bit would be helpful.
Right.
I know that, trees and whatnot can help block the view of that, so it may not be much of an issue, but there's a number of year-round residences in that neighborhood, and in the wintertime, the leaves are off the trees, and that light's going to come shining through the branches, and so that by itself is not going to be a solution to that. As far as the setback goes, I'm leaving that to ZBA. That's their territory with that. There were some comments about just the general design of the building. Part of it's the windows, and part of it's just the multi-levels and stuff like that. I would give it high points for creativity, but at the same time, one of the things we like to see is a bit more conformity to what's in the neighborhood, what's in the town. And this one stands out considerably. I'm not an architect, so I'm not really sure of the different styles and so forth with that, but I have my preferences, but that's me. Again, and just in looking at the design of the house, if there's requirements to kind of shrink it down a little bit, whether it be the decks, the windows, whatever, if there's any part of the architecture that can be readdressed and make it sort of calm it down a little bit, as a lack of a better phrase, that would be very helpful as well.
Thank you.
Craig?
No special concerns.
Okay, the one thing I would not like to see is anything on the decking that makes, for privacy, things go higher.
Understood.
I just don't want to see blockade walls sticking up off of a roof deck where the blockade is, in my opinion, from the ground elevation, much uglier than
Creates
just
mass.
the fence. So,
You don't want more vertical mass
Exactly.
construction.
So I don't want to see anything higher than that.
Understood.
Anybody in the audience would like to speak on this? Okay,
Yes, sorry.
go ahead.
Virtually, I don't know if we can speak or not, if you can hear me.
We can.
Hi. So first of all, thank you for taking time to listen to me. I'm, as Mr. Zender and Mrs. Johnson know, my name is John Wilcox. I'm a butter to the south that is being referenced, and a lot of what I think you're talking about was what we talked about at the zoning board meeting. And I apologize because I'm not an attorney and I don't know where zoning cuts off and where planning comes in. So I'd like to just, if it's okay, take a minute to give you the same feedback we gave to the zoning board. As Mr. Zender and Ms. Johnson referenced, they have sent an email and we are working with them, but I thought it would be good if you heard our feedback from the horse's mouth first. So it's clear, first of all, just from the plans that Ms. Johnson and Mr. Zender have taken significant effort and expense to develop a very aesthetically pleasing house. And as a neighbor, we thank them for their effort. However, as longstanding owners, we're very concerned with the plans, both as a neighbor and as an abutter. As a neighbor, we feel like the house is out of character with the neighborhood in a number of ways. First, unlike this house, Beach Plum Lane, I think one of the members referenced this, consists primarily of single-floor residences with the occasional second-floor residence. Expansions, when done, have primarily been underground or lateral. Second, I could be mistaken because we haven't done an in-person walkthrough, but I don't believe there's a single residence on Beach Plum Lane with a third-floor roof deck. Approving this request on Beach Plum Lane sets the tone that the neighborhood on Beach Plum prefers to become more architecturally similar to Bayberry. And, we wonder if this is what the residents of Beach Plum Lane want. I just want to let you know, speaking for myself and my wife, we do not. That does not fit within the character of the neighborhood, as one of the members referenced. Third, Beach Plum Lane is a very dark area at night. If you haven't had the chance to drive down it at night, I would encourage you to do so and try and imagine the house fully lit. It will be a little bit bright. There's many windows, and I'm very concerned about the kind of light pollution that would come into our property specifically, but also in the neighborhood, just because, as you can see, it's a very close-knit neighborhood. As an abutter, that allowing a house like this to be built would greatly reduce any privacy we currently enjoy, and frankly would result in a significant diminution of value and enjoyment as built as is, which I don't think is going to happen based on the conversations we've had, but just that's all we have to go on right now. First is a request as the setbacks, because they're so close to the property line, combined with the various windows and decking, including the third row deck or third size deck and the size of the house. It's really easy to see anyone at any time, and you'll have a bird's eye view into our backyard. I mean, it's not hard to imagine that. It's a very, if you walk the property line and you imagine sitting on a third floor and seeing right into the houses, it's really easy. And we spend a significant amount of time in our backyard. As you look at our property from the south side, there's not much front yard, and so that is a big deal for us. Second, as stated at the May 5th zoning committee meeting, it's obvious the owners are looking to maximize the usage of the lot. So what we're concerned about is that spills over into maximizing the outdoor space, which would potentially result in cutting back vegetation on the property lines, which would be another loss of privacy for us. So I know there have been comments around addressing that. And again, I'm saying this in the abstract based on the plans that are on file right now. So hopefully we'll see some changes to that. And then lastly, the house, as you noted, abuts the walking path from the association to the beach, which contains foot traffic throughout the day. And based on the window and decking design, it appears the design affords more privacy by minimizing windows and decking on the north side, while building larger windows and decking on the south side, which abuts us. So this obviously, again, would be a privacy issue. So really, in short, just kind of as an abutter and a member of the neighborhood, we don't believe this is a house that is designed to fit within the Beach Plum Lane neighborhood, and look forward to kind of reviewing the future application as Mr. Zender and Mrs. Johnson referenced. And thank you for your time for listening.
Thank you. Anybody in the audience?
Yes, this is Donna Monroe. I'd like to speak to the issues as well.
Go ahead.
First of all, I appreciate the opportunity to do so, and Ms. Johnson's willingness to listen to us, and I think probably make some adjustments to the plans here. I did send an email into the planning board. I copied Mr. Zender and Ms. Johnson as well. I don't know for sure if that's included in the record. Perhaps you can answer that question for me. I can read the whole thing into the record if that's necessary, or summarize for you.
Paul?
Ms. Monroe, when did you send the email in?
It was sent the 13th, so Monday.
Okay, I didn't receive it. It could be in my junk mail, or it could have been routed to something else, so, did you send it in to the town or to me specifically?
I sent it in to planning board at Eastham.
Okay, all right, we can retrieve it. It didn't come to me directly. We can retrieve it, and it will be put into the record.
Okay.
And they will, I will provide the board a
Right.
copy at the next hearing.
That's
Okay,
fine.
I appreciate that. If I could take a few minutes, though, to sort of summarize, because John Wilcox highlighted a number of concerns I think we both share. First of all, the house is beautiful. I don't think anybody can really debate that. But as John said, the nature of the neighborhood on Beach Plum is very, very different from that on Bayberry, even though it's all part of Sunset Village. Beach Plum Lane has much more modest homes, whether two-story or single-story. They present far more modestly. I suspect talented architects can probably do something with the existing design to make it fit more in character with the homes on Beach Plum, whether single-story or two-story. I mean, I've seen a lot of creative architecture, and I have confidence that they can probably do something like that without, significantly or adversely impacting Karen Johnson's desires for her dream home here. The second things I would echo is the lighting in the home, around the home, and in the home. It's, to my way of thinking, remarkable. I summarized it in my email to the planning board. But if all of the lights exterior to the home were lit at once, along with all of the windows, I would be like a beacon. You might as well be a lighthouse in the neighborhood. And I think that's one of the things about Beach Plum Lane is that it's a relatively quiet, largely dark street. And that's one of the things I know we enjoy about the Cape, is being able to see the stars in the night sky, occasionally comets and meteors, and the amount of light that the current design envisions would, in my judgment, as I understand it, significantly and adversely impact the character, the climate, and the environment on our road, not to mention perhaps others. And third, I would just mention that we're a little concerned about what happens with the vehicles, the parking and so forth. That road is a dirt road. Contrary to some of the narratives that I've seen, it is pretty heavily traveled. There are routinely garbage trucks almost every day of the week, delivery vehicles. You all probably get Prime. Everybody else does too. They're up and down that road every day. Construction vehicles, repair vehicles, and then, of course, resident vehicles. So it's a pretty heavily traveled street, and I don't know where the driveway is going to go. There was some comment saying it was paved. It's not paved. I don't even know that it's marked. But where cars park and where they turn around should be looked at carefully to make sure that it doesn't further exacerbate the travel on that road. So those are our primary concerns summarized for you. I appreciate the fact that the more detailed narrative will be included in the record. Ms. Johnson has a copy of it, as does Mr. Zenner, so they know exactly in more detail, what our concerns are. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Anything else you need to know before coming back?
Yeah, one thing, Mr. Chairman. I thought Ms. Monroe brought up a good point, which is traffic and, you know, it's one thing, you know, we haven't really looked, at least through the zoning process, haven't focused a lot on. Is the board looking for some more information about the parking areas, maybe, in
Well-
the site? It's fairly straightforward. You come right in, there's the parking area on the left-hand side. It's a gravel drive. So we're happy to provide more information, or I just wanted to make sure the members didn't have any concerns or questions about vehicular movement
Okay.
and traffic.
Let's talk about that. First of all, the plan does show that the gravel drive will remain, so
Right.
they're going to use the spaces there. Is there a desire, this is something we always discuss, so we're going to discuss it now. Is there a desire to create a K-turn within the property so that the property, the resident leaving the property will not have to back out onto Beach Plum Lane? Is there, usually, when it's a low-traveled road, we don't require the turning movement within the site. We do have the option to have it here. There is a place to put the K-turn. So I'm going to ask board members, and what this relates to is whether or not you think there's a danger or a disadvantage, shall we say, of backing out onto Beach Plum Lane versus creating the turning movements within the site and going out forward. Peter?
Might be in the summertime a little bit, but I don't think so.
Okay. Brian?
It's an interesting question. I think so driving over the lawn for a beach house, to me, is not a bad thing. And if you look at the usage, how many times they're going to be doing that, per day or per week or per month, then that could present, an issue whether you're going to destroy the vegetation. But I would say some kind of modified plan might be in order, but I'm open because it's, as you said, a low traveled road.
Dave?
I'm not sure how much the volume is on that road, to be honest, especially at that point in the road.
It's a dead-end street, from
Yeah.
what I can see, and I'm prepared to be corrected by anybody who lives in the neighborhood, because I drove out there, I looked at the side, I walked the side, I drove to the end of the road, I drove
Right.
back, I got a sense of it. I don't know it like the people that live there know it. My sense was that it appeared to be primarily a beach community, fairly casual in terms of the way the road is maintained and laid out, and the way it drives laid out. Personally, I think that if you had to back out of that in the summertime, you'd wait for somebody to drive by, and then you'd back out. But I do understand that if the board feels that that's a safety concern, I can ask Karen to look at that. But that will take away from vegetation and landscape movement. Frank,
Well, I mean,
so.
because I had trouble backing out of it. I mean, I had to do it twice in the sense to get out. Now, I'm not used to backing out of that place, so I think it wouldn't hurt to have a K-turn, although it may take some of the vegetation out, but I think some of those trees are going to come out anyways. I think it would be helpful.
Thank you.
Okay. Rod?
Yeah, two things I would bring up is how many cars do they anticipate to have there? Because I pulled in there today. I would say I was there about 10:30. To drive down the street, I had to pull into somebody else's driveway to let 2 delivery trucks go by me, because the street is very, very narrow for a dirt road in Eastham. And we have a few of those, but this one definitely is. And then I pulled in there, and then I walked around the property. And when I went to come out, I had to wait a couple times to just be able to pull out and turn myself around. If they have anyone visiting them, where do they anticipate having that car park? And that's number one. Number two is, I think having the ability for them to be able to at least do possibly a K-turn to get out of there might behoove them, not alone all the other neighbors who have to put up with what goes on that street. Today, probably luck of the draw, I went there today, and today was a day when there was the FedEx delivery, there was somebody working on a house, that, you know, it was a typical Eastham day. Today was a work day, you know, so there were multiple vehicles on the road, plus neighbors just pulling out. So it was negotiable, but it took some time and, you know, some wherewithal.
That's very
So,
helpful.
you know, they may want to, I mean, and again, if it's just them in one car, okay, but if they're going to have company, you know, maybe they don't have friends, who knows? But if they're going to have company, there's no place for the company to park.
Yeah, look, you know, generally we ascribe 2 parking spaces per dwelling. 20 days out of the year, that's fine. 60 days out of the year is not enough, so, you know.
Right,
You have a
right.
party.
It's going to be tight. It's
Yeah,
going to be
so-
tight here.
And again, I'm asking the board for feedback because I
Right,
think
that's,
this is one
that's
of
all,
those-
that's all
and it's
I'm
very
giving you.
valuable.
Today was, you know, I just happened to pick the day when it was like a busy day on the street, and, you
I just
know,
wanted to, I really wanted the feedback because I just didn't want to leave something undiscussed. today. And
Absolutely.
This is very, very helpful, and thank you, Mr. Young.
Okay. Kevin?
If you hadn't said 10:30, I thought maybe it was one of my cars. My car, I was there later, so not quite as much traffic perhaps, but going down the road to get to the house, I had to pull over. There was a gentleman on a bicycle coming by, and I didn't want to spook him because there wasn't a lot of space there. And then backing out, I had no trouble backing out, but it spooked me as I, you know, got ready to turn the wheel. There was someone coming down the road that was waiting for me to finish backing out that I didn't see very clearly when I was pulling out. I did see delivery trucks, but that wasn't until I got up to Sunset. And I think in particular, just from a safety standpoint, that the most traffic that's going to be there is probably going to be during the summer. That's going to have kids, some just running along in bare feet, others with their bicycles or whoever. And there's more visitors, and we all know that there's more traffic during the summer. So to have some sort of a turnaround on the lot itself, I think I would love to see, for safety reasons, if nothing else.
Thank you. Thank you.
let me just jump in too. And you have the walkway to the beach right there. So you're talking, I mean, that abuts the property. So you're going to have foot traffic and, you know, a lot going on that, you know, you don't want to think of not that you're going to have an issue with somebody backing up.
Don't want to back over a child. No,
Right.
Usually you don't. So, thank you.
Craig?
I'm for a K turn there.
Okay.
There seems to be absolutely no argument
Why don't you
against the
just-
K turn.
Counselor?
Yes,
Why don't you just take this? Just so simple,
usually I get these before the meeting, like when it first starts, so. thank you.
something like that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Anything with me?
Yeah,
Oh, thank
yeah.
you.
Mr. Chairman, responsibility in Massachusetts, the state puts responsibility on the driver of any vehicle who's backing.
Right.
Would be unsafe backing. That's the person that's going to get sued in these situations.
I agree. So my opinion is that we should have a K-turn, and if you look at the impact that I drew, it's minimal on the lot. And you can landscape around it, so you can screen it, and at that point, I think it would be appropriate. So with that, are you ready to rock and roll?
Yeah.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, sorry.
Yes, Paul?
If you don't mind, I just want to, I think this has been a good, constructive discussion. Some guidance to the board. We'll see what the revised plans look like, but, you know, on the way to approval, the board is going to have to make findings, and I think the trickiest part with pretty much every case you see is the prevailing character issue, and how does it relate to the rest of the neighborhood. So I think the abutters brought up some good points, but just bearing that in mind as you think about the project and, you know, take account of what the revisions are, and in context of what the abutters were saying, I think that's, you know, technically the neighborhood, as we define it, includes portions of Bayberry and Cobbett Lane on the other side, but there's definitely a distinct character between Bayberry and Beach Plum, and just my guidance to the board is we'll have to make findings about how this design, the final version of it, relates to the neighborhood, and that's going to be kind of an important point on this case. So,
Okay.
just food for thought.
It's our regular schedule problem. We have to struggle with these one by one. Okay,
I would ask the board to consider a continuance to your next meeting. next month.
yes. So is there a motion to continue case number PB 2024-01 to our June meeting of, date?
17th.
17th.
June,
Probably the 19th, right?
June 19th.
9th, all right, to June 19th, 2024.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Everybody, we can do this, bye. Okay, we'll see you next month.
Thank you all for your
Who
time.
seconded that?
What's that?
Who did the second?
I second.
Rob seconded.
Who made the motion?
Oh,
Kevin.
Kevin.
Kevin, all right, thank you.
Okay. Okay,
Oh, sorry, one moment, thank you. June 19th is a holiday.
June 19th. What holiday?
Wednesday?
That's Juneteenth.
Juneteenth.
That's a holiday.
Juneteenth.
Is it a federal holiday, or are we gonna,
Yeah, the town hall is closed. It's absolutely a real holiday.
so what are, we have other problems with other groups? What day of the week is available to us? We don't know. And this has to be date certain, so I need to know what we're gonna do.
Hold on one second, I can check the calendar. If there's a spot available, we can move it.
If you wanna do the week before, but that's not good for Ben, because that's too tight.
We're
Yeah.
fine, whatever day
Okay.
you want to, we're,
I think the next week, the 26th,
I would do 26th.
at this moment it is, and the only other group that meets then is finance, and they're not meeting at the moment.
So the 20, yeah, so town hall is available on the 26th.
All right, so let's revise let's cancel the motion
Oh, it's
we
in
had.
there? Oh, all right, sorry, you're ahead of me. Yes, we did adjust, sorry.
Okay,
Someone was thinking ahead. We did adjust. The regular June meeting is going to be the 26th anyways, because we adjusted for that. I forgot.
so let's cancel the motion, and let's start a new motion. Is there a
Motion
motion
to
to
26th.
continue case
Kevin.
number PB 2024-01 to June 26, 2024.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll see you then.
thank you all for your time. Nice to be here, thanks.
Okay. Here we go. We're going to call the next case, which is case number PB 2024-04 for 95 Campground Road, as shown on map 8, parcel 234. Robert and Lynn Stagen, owners. McPhee Associates Incorporated, applicant, seeks site plan approval residential pursuant to Eastham zoning bylaws, section 7.4, residential lot intensity, and section 10.3, site plan approval residential, to construct a four-bedroom dwelling with attached garage on a lot containing 20,000 square feet or more, where the site coverage exceeds 3,000 square feet. Good evening.
I have a set here. You can.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Rob McPhee here, Diana Zaglio on our design team, and here on behalf of the Staggins, the property owner, tonight. And I'll let Diana walk us through the project.
Hi.
Okay.
Okay, so the lot, as we know, is, there's no existing house. It's a very good-sized lot, and the proposal is to build a house that is centered on the large lot with a fair amount of vegetation, a good vegetative border around it. We're not planning to clear-cut everything and replant trees, I don't know, just to make sure that's understood. The Staggins would like to keep as many healthy trees as they can for a good amount of the border, and there is also a lot of dead wood and bramble, and it's quite a thick lot. It's actually kind of hard to make it through there at the moment, so. But really, their hope is to build a house that does feel appropriate to the neighborhood. And it's a little bit larger, but it's also on a little bit larger lot, and is set back enough from all of the abutters as well as from the street to feel not obtrusive and in a style that feels appropriate. So I think that is a summary, really, of the project, and
Yeah, and I'd just
Yeah.
add to it that, that there are no other special permits or variances that are being sought with the town, for this. Everything that we've designed is in conformance with the zoning for the town. And we've really just tried to work with the homeowners on a design that would suit their lifestyle as they get ready to retire to the Cape. And they've summered for many, many years here in Eastham. And as Diana said, it is a larger lot for the area. We're here, as the chair had mentioned, because of the size of the disruption that would take place on the lot. But from what we understand with the purview for your board, it's in compliance with those matters. And so not to hold everybody up, we'd be happy to take any questions.
I think what might help us, this is a tough lot to walk.
Yeah, agreed.
Dense.
And I think if you were to add to the plan a clearing limit line, because we're wrestling with the fact that it's very heavily vegetated. But for us to try to make a determination as to whether, when you're through, it's still going to be screened to the properties around this site, is hard to make without some sort of clearing limit line. Paul, when we get into something like this, and we assume a natural buffer is going to remain, then we normally would not require a landscape plan, technically, if the landscaping exists. So I guess the question is, how do we protect the town and the neighbors with respect to perhaps that envelope of clearing limits or something like that? Do you have any other suggestions on something like that?
Well, I think on the landscape plan,
Yeah,
there is and it's on a smaller size sheet, so you might,
All right.
Yeah, it's a
there is a delineation of a
Maximum
limit of
limit
the
of
clearing.
Oh, okay, I didn't see that.
Think-
Okay, it's a smaller plan.
Yeah, I think,
That
and
would
they are,
work.
and they are proposing to add some more trees on the rear lot line where the house is going to be closest to the neighbor. I think maybe some more discussion on the campground roadside where the driveway is about, and maybe some more understanding of like how much, they are leaving, I guess there's kind of two parts to this. So we have the 6-foot perimeter vegetation requirement, and so that is clearly met on all sides. I guess some more discussion about on the front side by the driveway, how much clearing, and then how much impact that's going to be on the house, because this then relates to the character of the neighborhood. And, the surrounding houses are quite smaller and more modest. But this lot is fairly large, and it's going to be setback, it exceeds the minimum setbacks, and it's going to remain heavily vegetated. So that's kind
Yeah.
of where you got to maybe some more detail and discussion and understanding of the balance of that. So if the board feels like this house is appropriate, given the mitigating issues of lot size but I think you definitely want to have a good understanding of that.
So this house does meet the latest coverage codes requirements on,
As far as the site coverage,
as far as the size of the house?
yeah, it's
site
within
coverage.
the limits.
Okay.
But it differs significantly from the surrounding.
I understand.
It differs from the ones on campground, but the ones on Herringbrook that abut it are kind of large houses.
Yeah, there's a range, and so again, like I said, the character of the neighborhood is always the trickiest part, because as we define the neighborhood, when you do that radius, it actually is a kind of eclectic area, because you got campground, you got Herringbrook, it actually extends over to the Massasoit, and there's some kind of mixed-use buildings there, but this is where the kind of the discretion of the board is, that's the defined neighborhood, but then you got to kind of drill down about what is the immediate area and what is the impact. So you kind of look at more closely campground, Herringbrook, that area for context.
Right. Okay. I do note that the property owner to the south is shown, you show the edge of their lawn, and there's a fence right next to the property line, and then their shed. So that has been shown on the plan. I think they wrote a letter, but that'll be a little bit later in the presentation. Board members, any questions that you had as a result of going out there and looking at this site, Peter?
No further questions.
Okay. Brian?
I don't have any at this time.
Dave?
Not really, but I didn't walk the property.
I know. Okay. Rob?
Yeah, I just had a quick question, just logistically, since I drive by there at least twice a day. Where you have the existing gravel parking to be removed, is that where there's like a cutoff kind of thing? Okay.
Yes,
And
the
right
corner.
next there is like either a substation or something?
Yes.
All right, you do realize there are power station trucks that get parked there regularly on that gravel to work at that?
Yeah, we,
Just, I mean, just so
Yeah.
you know,
Oh,
if
okay.
you remove that gravel area, those trucks will be on Herringbrook Road.
yeah.
They won't have an off-street, not to mention that's also a good or bad area that there's usually during the summer, every other day, a Eastham police car parked there because that Herringbrook Road happens to be a notorious road where people drive over the speed limit on a regular basis. I live on the corner of Herringbrook Road. I know. So that gravel area is used on a regular basis by the power company. So you take that away, I'm not saying that that's their property, obviously they can take that away. There has to be some consideration. There is that substation there which gets worked on a regular basis. And any of us who live in the area know that there is a truck park there at least once a week, and during the summer maybe more, on that gravel area. So it's set back, so all of us who are coming from Route 6 across to then decide to turn down Campground to go on to Herringbrook or continue on Campground, know that they're out of our way so that we can get by there. Just want you to be aware of that's what that gravel area is used for.
Okay.
I understand it's the people who bought the property, it's theirs, they can do what they want with it, but right now it's used as a thoroughfare for those trucks.
That's,
I'm sorry.
oh, I appreciate that insight. And the owners, you know, when we started talking with them about this, expressed curiosity to the gravel area, and they on their own reached out to the town as well as to the Eversource, I believe is the substation.
Right.
And both of them wouldn't take credit for putting the gravel there, and they wanted to try to figure out how to clean it up.
Somebody put the
And
gravel there, and
somebody
the trucks
obviously-
are there all the time.
And so that's a great
yeah,
insight.
just so you know.
Yeah.
You know, in the future, that's how that works. The other question I just had is from Campground Road. So technically, if you were to do the landscaping that you had proposed, you really should only see the house primarily from the driveway area and maybe a little bit to the left. I mean, because the way it's going to be set back. I mean, it's a huge lot. It's a
Yes. It is.
beautiful
Yes.
lot. It's
Yeah.
great. You know, so those were my two main things, but just so you know, that gravel area is used.
Thank you for that insight.
You're welcome.
You know, they just want to try to screen that substation from their property.
Well, I would want to do the same,
Yes.
but they should also know that there will be trucks there
Yes.
someplace, and if the trucks have to be on Herringbrook Road, that's going to be an issue in general, which will require a police car to be there so people can drive around it.
I think one of their other concerns was just the other uses of that, like, I've been there a couple times now, obviously, having worked on the project, and there have been, you know, people put their old used furniture, like, up for grabs and things like that, and
Yeah.
it was more like just.
Yeah,
a matter of,
that's
you know,
not as
not a
much as
common use, yeah.
used as
It's really more
for,
the electric company.
you know, the electric company
Okay.
is there, and occasionally a
Hi.
police car is there.
Hi,
this
I'm
is-
sorry. Can you see me? I'm
Yes.
actually the owner of the property,
This is
my
Lynn
husband and I.
Stacken, one of the property owners.
Hi. I understand the concern around the gravel drive, and one of the things I did want to mention was, when we were up there this summer, someone had parked a car there to try to sell it, and the car did not have any license plate on it. So obviously that was a concern of us. And then the next time that we came up, someone had dumped a table there. So it was a big round table and the base of it. So you know, and it's also been used as a place where people are dumping their trash. So those were the reasons why we explored with both Eversource and with the town around, you know, who had built the gravel drive and was it something that we needed to maintain? Because we're just concerned that it is being used for people as a dumping ground, and we're not comfortable with that, obviously, on our property. Well, I think my husband just said the other thing is that people are using it to kind of illegally cut through from Campground over to Herringbrook. So we've seen that as well. So, you know, I think all of these are important considerations as we think about that gravel drive. So I just wanted to raise that. Thank you.
Okay. Kevin?
Thank you. Couple concerns. One is, and Paul has mentioned it a few times on different cases, but one of the things we have to look at is how the house fits in terms of the character of the neighborhood. Based on the information here, this house is just under 2.5 times the size of everything within the radius. That's big. That's real big. I don't hate big houses. Wish I could afford one myself. But part of our charge here is to take a look at the impact of construction and what it does to the neighborhood. And Campground is one of the older neighborhoods in the entire town, but it's its own history there. And to have this as sort of the gateway is kind of eye-popping based on what's there. So it's something I think we have to consider in terms of maintaining the character of the town. Is, you know, the size is big. It's 4,000 square feet. The average is a little under 1,700 in terms of that neighborhood. So it just gets my attention right off, and will certainly get everyone's attention. It's right on the corner. It'll be see it from 2 different angles. Can't miss it, really. So that's a concern that I have. Related to that, in terms of what to do about it, oftentimes what we try to do is talk about vegetation and try to sort of hide the house. For what that's worth. It looks as though there's less vegetation being considered along Campground, Herringbrook, or any of the other sides of the house. I think that's something that needs to be looked at or reviewed again, because, again, if that's going to be an issue for a lot of people, which I think it will be, the least that can be done is to try to mitigate that a bit through landscaping or whatever. It doesn't make the house any smaller, but, which was what I'd love to see personally, doesn't have to get down to the average, but something a little bit more reasonable that doesn't just leap out at you as you drive by, be my preference. But to the extent of the landscaping, that's something that can be done to at least help mitigate that a little bit, so it's not so eye-popping when you turn the corner. Specific to the gravel section on Herringbrook, I'm not concerned about the gravel so much. There was some good comments made. When you're leaving Campground and turning on to Herringbrook, or just going straight across, looking to your right, there's a bit of an angle there. And with the traffic and the speeds that are seen on Herringbrook, you start to pull out and say, whoa, where'd that car come from? That, I think, is a bit of a function of the landscaping along Herringbrook. On one hand, I'm telling you whatever we can do to sort of visually hide the house would be wonderful. On the other hand, if some concern is looked at to how to improve the sight lines coming out of Campground and going across the street in particular, because you don't have a lot of reaction time when the cars are speeding. And it's just not the best visual as you come down like that. But again, my biggest concern is really the size of the house, and it doesn't fit the neighborhood. It's way big compared to what else is there. But thank you.
Right.
Landscaping this project could be tweaked a little bit to make it better for everyone. However, it's a beautiful project. I'm in favor of it.
Okay. This is a large lot, and as a result, I personally don't have an issue with the size of the house because of it. If it was on this typical lot, I would. But this thing is a huge lot, and I believe it can be mitigated with landscaping. So the charge here that I would suggest is that you identify significant existing landscaping and then supplement it as you see necessary in order to screen the house as best you can. You have significant setbacks, you can do it.
Right.
This house can be screened. And if the reason that somebody doesn't like the larger house is visual, I think you can mitigate the impacts of the visual. That's my own personal opinion. Audience, anybody?
Can I?
Yes, go ahead.
I was just wondering if you could make the driveway like an S-curve or something, so that you don't see the house at all from campground?
I mean, I guess part of the thought is not wanting to run the driveway like in front of the house, obviously, to make
Right.
it longer, a longer drive, and then you have more actual driveway.
less
And yet,
vegetation.
not wanting to come down the road and then have to kind of like turn back in. I mean, we could look at shaping it. I did look at kind of giving it more of a curve at one point, but I just didn't want to carry it further past the house, too much further, but
And the longer the driveway, the more vegetation that's cleared to accommodate the
I don't know. It's
access,
kind
opening
of
it up.
a
but-
weighing of the,
All I was trying to
But
do
yes.
is
Yeah.
to have
Shape.
this massive house.
Yeah,
Right.
right,
And if you
Right.
don't see it,
right,
Right.
it's a
right.
lot easier to,
Agreed.
I understand what you're saying,
Agreed.
yeah.
And on the small plan that you have in front of you, I mean, there is I know it's not the easiest to read, but there is a dotted line just to the bottom left corner of the driveway, and it goes across left, and then it starts to meander up the left side. That's the clearing line that we've identified as far
Right.
as place for the house, the septic, and the rest of it's just to remain natural, and to express the concern, they want the privacy from the neighbors as well from the street. They don't want to be exposed to everybody either. And it is a large lot.
Okay. I think we're ready for audience comments. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Please come up to the podium and identify who you are and your address.
Dan, this is Carolyn McPherson on Zoom.
Yes, you'll be next if there's nobody else in. No, it's
Thank
okay,
you.
you're up, let's go.
Okay, fine. Hi, I'm Cornelia Sattel. I live at 195 Campground Road. Probably the smallest place on the street. I built it 10 years ago. I was here before some of you at the time. Very small lot. My cottage is about 915 square feet. All right, so this monster that's supposed to go up is over 3 times the size. And when I hear a 4-bedroom dwelling, I see 4th of July weekend, not just 4 cars, I see 12 cars. And I see them turning at what was already referenced as a dangerous intersection. There are accidents there in the summer all the time, Herringbrook and Campground where they meet. Again, people are speeding on Herringbrook, people on Campground are not focused, they're coming from the beach, various reasons. But there's going to be a lot more traffic right at the intersection, especially in the summer. If the owners build for themselves, they will have maybe 1 or 2 cars, right? But if you're building a 4-bedroom dwelling, you're expecting a lot of company. So there's going to be a lot more people living there than the owners most of the time. Otherwise, what's the need for 4 bedrooms and X number of bathrooms and the butler's pantry and the mudroom and the this and the that? I just think this house really doesn't fit on Campground Road, even if the lot is big enough and the setbacks are right. I think it's just too big for the neighborhood. This is not what Campground Road looks like. And landscaping comes and goes, and in the winter, when the leaves are down, that house is going to be visible. Everybody turning into Campground Road will already think they're on Shirtleff, where the big mansions have gone up. So, when I built my place, it was about make it fit the neighborhood, blend in. And I did. And I just think this one really doesn't fit this neighborhood. This is one of the oldest streets in Eastham. You can read Henry David Thoreau's Cape Cod. He describes how he walks down Campground Road. You can look out the window and say, yeah, that's what it looks like. It's not going to look like that anymore with that mansion going up. So that's my concern. It's too big. There are going to be too many people there, and right at the turn to Herringbrook. So I'm not in favor of it. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Oh, good afternoon. Thank you for letting me talk. My house is a direct abutter. Our property extends along the whole rear of the proposed property.
I can't hear you.
You're very faint. Can you speak louder? I'm sorry.
I'll try and speak louder. Is that better?
A little better.
Okay, I'll do my best. I'm on Zoom, so.
Okay.
I'm an abutter. My property is off of Herringbrook. Our side property extends the whole length of their rear property.
Yeah.
So we're in a abutter along the whole side. I agree with a lot of the things that have been said about the mass and the size of the house and the not fitting in because of that with the character of campground. I don't need to repeat all the statistics that you already have. My concern and first of all, and let me say the design from a aesthetic perspective is very much a Cape Cod design, and I appreciate that the architect and the owner have gone to great pains to make it look like it belongs in Eastham. I applaud them for that. My concern is just what the previous person said. Campground is a very historic area in Eastham. There is no other house that's anywhere near this size from there all the way to the ocean, or to the bayside. And so I would worry that if this house is approved at this size, that the next time the planning board gets an application for someone who wants to build something 2/3 of the way down campground, you'll look at this house as a comp and say that large houses are okay. And as the previous person said, and campground could become the next Shirtlift Road, which nobody who lives in and around campground wants. So enough said about the historic nature of the size and the precedent setting. I am concerned about the clearing, partly because I'm in a butter, and in the back where the back of your house faces my house, I'm very worried about all the light that will spill out and into our backyard. As someone said on the prior project, we love going in our backyard and looking up at the stars and the seclusion that backyard affords. If you take down all the big trees, you will be looking into my backyard and in fact into my bedroom window from your upstairs. And that gives me concern. But in addition to the impact it has on me personally, we have a zoning law that talks about saving legacy trees. And so I would hope that one of the conditions imposed on this project would be, wherever possible, that's not in the footprint of the building, to try to save the legacy trees, in addition to building the vegetative barrier that's required. I do think that in the front, I think Kevin mentioned this, vegetation screening in the front to hide the size and the mass is important. It needs to be evergreen as well as deciduous, so that in the winter it's still there. The same is true with the screening on the back. I hope that abuts my property. We've talked about the safety of pulling out onto Herringbrook. I'm sure that the owners understand this, but it's not just Herringbrook. You've got campground, Herringbrook, and traffic spilling immediately off of Massasoit, which you really can't see, and they have no stop sign. And so it's a very dangerous intersection, and anything from a visual perspective you can do to help keep the sightlines open will be much appreciated. I have grandkids who stand at the end of my driveway waiting for the school bus, and I worry about all that traffic. So I think size, mass, the way it fits in the neighborhood, it's a beautiful house. It's a beautiful lot when it's all going to be said and done. But I think the size and mass is not appropriate for the historic nature of that area. And particularly if the planning board then starts to use this house as a comp for future endeavors. There are a number of vacant lots on campground. I'm sure there's some houses that someday someone might buy and want to build a slightly bigger house on. I would ask you and urge you not to do that. Those are my comments. And I thank you for letting me talk and participate. And I'm happy to meet my new neighbors.
Very good, thank you. I have a, yeah, please, come up.
Jamie Dimitri, 45 Care Drive, and the Eastham Select Board. And I just wanted to reiterate something that I keep hearing tonight, and that's community character. And I understand that some folks feel like that is not as quantifiable as some of the numbers that were set at town meeting in the last few years. Those are clear numbers, right? But it is part of the charge of the planning board to adhere to community character and existing community character in the town of Eastham. Community character is valuable, and it's what makes Eastham Eastham. So I think when I'm listening to the neighbors, what I'm hearing is that they're really scared right now. And, you know, they should be. This house, you know, if you look at the other houses on Campground, I can reiterate what we've heard, but it is wildly out of character with Campground. Not Herringbrook, this house is on Campground. And I think it's important for the folks sitting on the planning board to respect that and to respect the folks that currently live here and hear them. In addition, it's not just the folks that live on Campground, but it's the entire town of Eastham. You know, we've heard it loud and clear from the residents at town meeting, in our strategic plan, what folks want to see for the future of this town. And so it's important to keep that in mind, that we want to welcome new people, we want to welcome new development, but we also don't want to do that to the detriment of our existing home. So I appreciate everybody that's gotten up to speak and all the work that's going into all of this, because I know it's a lot of work for everybody, and so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a change.
Hello?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, my name is, yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, but we can't see you.
Okay, no, I'm using my phone. I just got a new iPad and I haven't set it up yet. And so I'm using my iPhone. My name is Alan Zorenskis, and I live on 35 Millennium Lane, which is a dogleg between Campground and Massasoit. We've owned ever since '09, and I will say, I've lived there in the winter when the trees and leaves all fall. Everybody says you can see everything. I've lived there in the winter. Now I go there from June the 15th, we're usually going, till October 15th. There's a beach at the end of Campground. Drive down Campground, the 2,000 square foot house, which is the largest right now, is way, way set back, and you don't even know it's there. But it's only 2,000 square feet. I agree. I think 4,000 square feet ruins the character. Drive down, get on Zillow, which I've done. Look at the square footage of the hound. My home is only 1,200 square feet. In the summers, when we leave Millennium onto Campground, which is right almost across the street from this site, it's traffic. It's a beach road too. There's people on it with their beach things, their carriages, their pushes, and all that. This would ruin the character of the road. It ends in a beach. It's a beach road. I agree with everything everyone has said. Lovely house, lovely land plan. It should be somewhere else and not here in Eastham. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Can I add something? For example,
You have to come up to the podium.
I think the matter of precedent really is a huge concern for us. For example, Paul, what number are you at? 250. That's a big lot, but he has two structures on it, and he has a lot of space, but it feels in character with the road. So drive down the road and look at the houses. I'm not saying everything needs to be a 1,000 square foot cottage, but this is really too big for us. And I also want to speak to the gravel. The gravel is there for the utility vehicles, for the police, as overflow parking. And initially, the owner made some statements like, you know, tables get discarded there, or people put their trash there. We're a pretty clean neighborhood. When I go around on Millennium Lane in the morning with the dog, I don't see one piece of trash. So just to set the record straight, we take pride in our neighborhood, and We are very, very clean and very proud of our little properties there.
Thank you. On your grading plan, I'm going to give you this. You want to take this? You're showing regrading right where Carolyn McPherson lives. These grading lines don't have to be here. You could hug the 38 and leave the 36 where it is, instead of coming down towards her property, okay? Because if you clear it, if you regrade it, you'll ruin the trees that are there. So I don't want to see that. Okay. Anybody else want to speak on this? Okay. Paul, do we have letters on this?
The only letter was from Carolyn
Carolyn
McPherson.
McPherson?
And
Okay.
we have that on file.
Okay, board members, it seems to me we have a couple options here. We can suggest to the applicant that they do an inventory of the landscaping that's there, the vegetation that's there, and where it isn't going to be surviving this construction, the implementation of additional landscaping. If the board feels that mitigation of the visual impact of this house is important, and I personally do, I'm not sure we have enough data to render a proper decision. So my question to the board right now, and I'll poll the board, is would you like to see additional information regarding screening of this house prior to this board taking a vote? Peter?
Additional screening would be fine.
Okay. Brian?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that given the discussion, that would be a good idea.
Okay. Dave?
I think the size of the house is just too big. I don't care how you screen it. Screening's nice, but it's just a massive, massive structure in an area that does not have that type of house. And it's part of our duty to keep the neighborhoods relatively the same. And so, yeah, do that, but you gotta know from me that it's too big of a structure, and you gotta do something about it, or I'll vote against it. So.
Okay. That's fine. I'm glad you're making your statement. Rob?
Two things. If you were to do a revised vegetation plan, I'd love for you to do some type of an artist rendering so I can see what it's going to look like from the road, so I can see how you're hiding the house. But I would have to fall in the category of Dave that I feel the house is too big for the neighborhood, and most likely would not be in favor of voting for it as it is now. But certainly it would help to see what it's going to look like from the road, so I could have a better feel.
Kevin?
Similar sentiment. Certainly more detail in the landscaping, addressing the questions that you've heard. But given the size, I cannot support this given that size. I think that some work has to be done on revisiting the floor plan. I don't know what, usually when you're looking at a house, there's kind of three items: things you don't want, things you do want, and certain things that be nice to have, but you can live without it. And whether it's the third category that I mentioned, that there can be some wiggle room on, I don't know. But given the size of this house, given the rest of the neighborhood, I could not support it in its current form.
Greg?
I feel your pain. I really do. I think landscaping plan is going to be a key here. However, you certainly have certain legal rights. You keep your legal rights in mind going forward.
Okay.
May I add one thing?
Yes.
I think that you can also alleviate the, well, not the congestion, but certainly the level of accidents or car mishaps in front of the house by eliminating a lot of the vegetation. So that might, and the house has got a good distance from the road, so you can do that, and I think it would be a good addition to the neighborhood.
I mean, can I chime in on a couple of?
Please do.
Thank you. And I agree. I think pushing some of the vegetation back from the street to open up some sight lines, but it's a fine line of also providing privacy to the home. You know, I've heard from everybody the concern with the size of the home. And just as a reminder, this is, I would have to say, probably one of the larger lots in that surrounding area as well. It's 1.03 acres of land that we're working with here. We're not working on a 5,000 or 7,000 square foot lot for a new home. A 4-bedroom home, from a definition of a building code, is 2 occupants per bedroom. That's 8 people in that home on a year-round basis. From an occupancy standpoint, we're not looking at VRBOs and house rentals. This is to be a family home that has 2 grown children that come and visit when they choose to visit the family in the holidays. You know, so accusations of a high occupancy and high vehicle use of the home. I mean, I think it's fair to say anyone with a summer house on the Cape has a lot of visitors at certain times of the season. We all go through that. It's a beautiful thing about the Cape. Everyone wants to come and enjoy it. But it's not on a year-round basis. And, you know, they want their privacy as much as everyone else wants to have the privacy and the screening from the home. You know, and if there was any guidance from the board, or maybe it's in the bylaws and I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard a ratio tonight talked about this home being 2.5 times the size of the average homes. What is that ratio in comparison to the lot size in relation to those homes? Has anyone done that study? Is it out there? You know, are we 3.5 times? You know, we're actually looking to the favorable, or are we, or is it 1.5 to 1 3/4? I don't have the answer to it. I don't know if it's something the board has looked at, but to put out the size comparison of homes in your radius that you request us to go through, I think should have a lot of factor of the lot sizes that we're building on as well. And, you know, this isn't in your purview, but it's just an observation, and it's a challenge as a local native of Cape Cod myself, not from Eastham, but I'm born and raised here, and you've seen the transitions that happen throughout the Cape. It becomes, I think, more and more difficult for a lot of us, you know, the housing in general, the land values, the resale property prices that we all see these days, and even before the pandemic. It's hard for somebody to go out and buy a piece of land for a chunk of money or an old cottage, and then when you go to try to update these properties and the compliances that you have to work within, energy codes, flood zones. I mean, there's a lot of things that drive cost in homes, and it's you know, it becomes a factor of consideration for anyone buying a home. And I don't mean as an investor, but just as a resident. You know, you're moving in there, and you know, it's an investment in the long run for them, for their family. So we're you know, happy to take your advice. We can request a continuation and go back and work on a landscape plan. We can consult with the owners and talk about, you know, do we revisit the architectural plans? I mean, I think I heard 3 of you tonight say you would not vote for this house the way it is. I'd like to think we could try to work with landscaping. We have a large home here. Maybe we have to take some legal advice into consideration.
Okay. I would like to make a few comments. This does meet the latest code revisions at town meeting. So you made the point. Town meeting made their opinions known as to size of houses, and this house meets all of that. This lot is twice the size of the normal lot. You can't ignore that in property rights of an owner, in my opinion.
I'm just speaking to the charge of.
I understand. I'm just saying, from the standpoint of the houses down Campground Road are not on 1-acre lots. So therefore, logically, they would have smaller houses. I understand the problem of character, and that becomes a matter of review. And there are board members that agree that this house is larger than the character of the neighborhood. And I agree that it is. The question is, this board is charged with weighing the rights of the property owner versus weighing the concerns of the neighbors on the character of the neighborhood. And we have to weigh that out. And I don't know where it's going to go on this application. And I'm not going to instruct anybody to change their mind one way or another. That's not what this board is all about. This board supports individual members expressing and voting their minds. And that is not going to change. So, having said that, I can't guarantee what's going to happen here. Paul, I think that, I think in asking for a continuance is appropriate. I think you know what you'd get tonight, and quite honestly, let's go through that. You need a simple majority, not a super majority. This is not a commercial site plan application. There are 7 members of this board. We have 7 members here. One's missing. You need 4 out of 7 for your vote. So therefore, Planning Board rules and regulations recognizes the fact that not every member is going to be unanimous in terms of their ideas. Nor as chairman do I want that to happen. So I want everybody to express their own opinions and vote accordingly. So where we are now is you can request a continuation. You can ask for your vote tonight. It's your option. I am not going to sway you one way or another, but I will ask you, what's your preference?
I would like to request a continuation
Okay.
to the next meeting so we can go back and revisit some of the concerns we've
So
heard tonight.
with that, now that we have the applicant saying he's going to come back, other than what we've already discussed, is there anything else a planning board member would like to see him bring to the next meeting? Peter?
I'm all right with it.
Okay. Brian?
I think all the issues have been thoroughly discussed.
Dave?
I'd like to ask Paul a question.
Sure.
The character of a community, does it talk about lot size at all?
Well, we utilize the site coverage,
Yep.
which is the size of the house is ratio to the lot size. So that we don't, but we also look at, well, in the staff report, as you know, we provide average lot size, average site coverage, average
But
building
trying
size to the extent, and I just want to be clear, this is not a perfect science because the data that we use is the assessing data. It's not the same level as what the applicant provides, as level of detail, and so it's a generalized net living area. But that's the best information. That's what's in the staff report, excuse me, to try to give the sense for the board of what the sizes are for the neighborhood.
I understand that. What I'm asking is if you're trying to protect the character of a neighborhood, just because you have a 6-acre lot in the middle of it, does that mean they can put a monstrous dwelling on it?
No.
I don't believe that the size of the lot has anything to do with the character of the community. There are certain limitations with the size of the lot, I totally agree. But just because you have a large lot doesn't necessarily mean that you can have a large house just because you have the acreage.
I would agree with that. I think the lot size is a factor, and looking at, in context comprehensively, any project. So that could often be a mitigating factor to offset a large house. But I agree with you, a large lot doesn't necessarily mean a large house should automatically be approved. It's a factor, and like, this gets back to my other comment on the other case. It's the prevailing character. We have the site, the review criteria, the board has some of it. We've tried to tighten up to make it less subjective, try to put some numbers on it, but the prevailing character is always going to be somewhat subjective. We even tried to have this definition of a neighborhood, the 300-foot radius, but the board still has discretion to look beyond that for context, or also to focus the attention, given, you know, the specifics of the surrounding area, and I think that's something you have to consider. Like I said before, no matter which way this comes out, the board's going to have to make findings about all this criteria, the mass, the scaling, and the character. I think my guidance, if you don't mind, just to the applicant would be, I think there's an opportunity here. There's, you know, in the staff report, it mentions there's, you know, this is a historic area. There was a whole historic survey done. It has, we pointed out some notable properties. I think if you end up taking a look at the architecture, the size and scale, I think it's always helpful to kind of key off of those other properties. And if there's a way that you can relate this design, or however you're going to modify it, to how it blends in with the size, and it may, probably just being realistic, whatever you come back with is still going to be probably larger than the surrounding area, but that's where this comes into shaping the project and relating it back to how does this design fit in, key in with the architecture, the size, the scale. Doesn't mean the board cannot approve a larger home, even if it's larger than the average, but that's the combination of all these things is, yes, it may be a little bit bigger. Is it way bigger or a little bit bigger? And then how do those things mitigated with lot size, landscaping, all the other criteria? So I always say this to the board, it all comes down to shaping the project, pulling these different levers with architecture, size, scaling, siting. And that's
Is there a trend to larger houses? I would imagine, because lot cost is way up. I would imagine that the house sizes are increasing. Is that true?
Well, yeah, and I think we see that every month with the cases, and I think that's why, that's the importance of site plan review. And I've said this before, not every town has residential site plan review. In Eastham, we do, and we have for a number of years. And that's really why we have it, is because trying to balance, as the chair said, the notion, the changing trends and what people want in their property versus balancing that with the character of the neighborhood, the character of the town. And, I've said this before, it's reflected in the strategic plan, it's reflected in all of the things we've continued to strengthen the residential bylaws to try to get more control over that. And that's absolutely within the board's purview to look at these items as you have, use the review criteria and shape the project in balance with, try to get a balance between what the goals of the property owner are and what the values of the community are. So I think you're on the right track, and I guess with my 2 cents, as I said, I would just look at the community, look at the, the historical, there may be some things in that historic survey, and again, just what the surrounding properties look like. And again, that's going to help you, and it's going to help the board, because the board's going to have to make findings that justify the decision one way or the other. And if you're bringing good information and the board agrees with it, we can see how that relates. That's going to be helpful.
One question, if it's okay to ask, is it's been focused on size, but how about architecture? I heard a compliment from one of the guests that spoke on Zoom or in the audience about thinking it was a Cape style, fit into the community.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard any comments from the team up here, from the board, about architecture. We're talking about size and mass in relation to the lot size and what's around us, but
I find it to be Cape Cod style architecture.
and where I'm going with this is the observation about a historic area in the homes and to take a look. I mean, I just want to make sure we're not missing something if we should be looking at a style variation. I mean, we worked hard to try to find something we thought would work in the community and in that area. It's just obviously a little bigger, but a much bigger lot as well.
Okay. I'm going to continue. I asked the question, other than what's already been stated, is there anything else you want the applicant to bring to the next meeting? Rob?
No, I think if they bring some type of revised, so we could see what it's going to look like from the road, architecture-wise, now that you brought it up, definitely more fitting with the Cape than a lot of things that are brought in front of us. I think it's appealing. It's just on the large side.
Kevin?
You probably didn't hear about the architecture, because typically, if we don't have any problem with it, we don't comment on it. So, no issues there. Again, landscaping is going to be key to this. Personally, I would just ask that you take a look at the size of the house and what can be done with that. If there's some sort of compromise measure to sort of meet halfway somewhere on fitting into the neighborhood and the character, that would be key to me.
Briggs?
I would absolutely hate to see this project go to land court. It's a possibility. The applicant has a lot to think about.
Okay. At the applicant's request, is there a motion to continue case number PB 2024-04 to June 26 meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Now we're into informals. And the first informal is for 55 Shirtlift Road. Preliminary review, Ben Zender, representative.
My first informal, so gentle, please.
We'll try.
So it's nice not having a lot riding on this, but again, I'm Ben Zender, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant at 55 Shirtlift. And behind me is Christine Seaman, who's actually the daughter of Theodore and Ingrid Seaman, who built the cottages. The property's been in the family since 1946. The cottages were built in 1948. The intention here is to continue to operate in the family of the cottage colony. And, you know, before I get into the details of what I'm asking you, I'll just describe it. There's a single-family residence on the property. I hope some of you had a chance to go look at it. If not, I hope you do get a chance to look at it. It's a wonderful site, beautifully cared for by the family for the last, you know, almost 60 years. The dwelling that's on the property is dated. It needs to be rebuilt. The operation of the cottage colony involves, and I keep calling it a cottage colony, we'll get into that in a minute, but the operation of it involves a lot of repair work, which is being done out of the basement of the house. You know, you go down a little sort of neck breaker staircase into a basement that's full of just paint and trim and beach chairs and stains and carpentry, and so the operation really requires, you know, maintenance every year. So property is operated by Christine is the daughter of Theodore and Ingrid Seaman, and then Theodore and Ingrid's niece Carol is married to Bob Forsyth, and Bob and Carol are doing, I believe, doing the operational work. And so what they would like to do is remove the dwelling, replace it with a larger dwelling that involves also a garage that they can work out of. The questions that I'm really posing to the planning board, in addition to just obviously any general feedback on the project we'd love to hear, but as you can see from my memorandum, it raises some interesting legal questions, which, you know, sometimes things come up that test your bylaws. And so the first question really is, and I don't think there's any question that this is a pre-existing non-conforming use from a zoning standpoint, you know, this cottage colony that's non-conforming in the district, but that where you're going to remove and replace the dwelling, but you're not going to touch the cottages, is it a commercial site plan review or is it a residential site plan review? That's the first question. And so what I would posit is that I really feel, and this is just a feeling, that this is probably lends itself better to a residential site plan review because what we're really talking about is the replacement dwelling that they're building. Does it really do all the things you've been talking about in the prior applications tonight? Meaning, is it appropriate? As opposed to a commercial site plan review where there's a proposed change in the driveway which will make it safer and easier for people to get in and out, but they're not changing the operation of the cottages, they're not changing the parking areas, they're not changing the landscaping, they're not changing, you know, any real use aspects of this. So I'd love some guidance from you that I can take back to the building inspector as to how we apply for planning board review of the project. I would suggest that if this were a commercial site plan review, this might be an application that would qualify for a waiver application, because we're not changing in any way the use of the property in any way that I think would add from a commercial review of the property. Although if the board feels differently, that's fine. So I would suggest, I think this might lend itself better to a residential site plan review because of the single-family residence being redone. The other, now from a zoning standpoint, I think there's a question of what, if any, zoning relief is required. Now, that's really the building inspector's determination, obviously. But as the planning agency who proposes the bylaws and reviews them on a periodic basis and advocates for bylaw changes, I would love your input. It's my feeling that to the extent that this is a pre-existing non-conforming use, the cottage colony, I'm calling it a cottage colony use, if you don't intensify the use, then I don't believe that it requires any relief from the zoning board. And in my own opinion, if you're removing and replacing the dwelling that's still a two-bedroom dwelling that's used by the family to stay in the house and to operate the cottage colony without changing the cottages themselves or how they're rented or even how they're constructed, I'm not sure that there's an intensification of the pre-existing non-conforming use. But that's ultimately a question for the building inspector, but I would welcome your input on that. And finally, the question that poses the most interest to me is do the cottages constitute site coverage? And I've given you the definitions of the bylaw. The bylaw defines site coverage as the area, the floor areas of a dwelling, as well as accessory buildings. It really feels to me that site coverage was designed to regulate single-family residential uses or dwelling uses on a property. The cottages, and I keep calling them cottages, but they're not really, they don't meet the requirement of the definition of a dwelling because they're not 500 square feet. They don't meet the definition of a cottage because they're not 500 square feet. But they don't meet the definition of a cabin, which is 199 to 499, because they have kitchen facilities. So, and just to wrap this up with a nice neat bow as to why we're here is, if the cottages are determined to constitute site coverage, which again, I think is supposed to be something that's regulated by this board under a residential site coverage review bylaw. If they're part of a commercial use and they don't meet the definition of a dwelling, and they're commercial then, and they fall under a commercial site plan review, then it's really a different review process, because when you do commercial review, you're not looking to see how big something is overall, you're looking to see how it operates. So, if we do call them site coverage, then what happens is the ability to increase the size of this house, I think a relatively nominal increase in size, is no longer available, because then they run up against the residential site coverage limitations. So what I would like to see, just so that you know exactly what I'd love this board to say, the question of whether or not it's an intensification of a pre-existing non-conforming use is up to the building inspector. That cottages, rightly or wrongly, or these structures, rightly or wrongly, don't constitute site coverage, but that the review of this project is going to require planning board review under either a commercial or a residential, and we don't really have a dog in the fight as to how we come down on that. So that's kind of my presentation. I've given you a lot of materials to look at. I've given you the deed history. I think it's wonderful, you know, what Christine's parents did and how they've run this. And I'm hoping we can find a way to get this house built and move ahead. So, and thank you for hearing us.
Okay. As you can see, I've been working on this.
Of course you have.
I think it's commercial site plan review, and I'll tell you why. There's commercial activities on the property, number one. You almost stepped your own foot into something where you said they need space in the house to properly maintain the cottages. That's not a residential use. That's supporting the commercial use.
Fair enough.
So I feel that it's a commercial site plan approval, but I'm willing to listen to everybody else on the board. The other curious thing is you've shown a proposed building and you've shown no setbacks on it. And you're violating the 50-foot front yard setback. If I'm reading your plan right, it's not labeled, so I'm only figuring that your front yard setback is significantly less than 50 feet. I don't know what your side yard setbacks are. They're supposed to be 30. So I can't make a determination of your submitted plan as to whether or not it does conform to zoning. So I don't know where we go with this, but let's address the main issue first. Board members, do you think this is a residential site plan review or commercial site plan review? Peter?
I would agree with you.
Commercial, okay. Brian?
I'm in agreement with the chairman.
Okay. Dave? Rob?
Commercial.
Kevin?
A commercial.
And Craig?
I was leaning toward residential until you spoke up.
Okay, you're entitled to your opinion.
Welcome back, Mr. Chairman. All right.
So what did yours say?
Commercial.
Commercial. Okay, so now that takes care of that problem.
Fair enough.
That's starting the box. Now the question is, as commercial site plan review, we are going to be interested in what's going on in that residence in terms of your proposal. We are going to look at the cottages and square footages and all of that issue. We are going to look at setbacks. I agree with you, it's a beautiful site, and it needs to remain in business, as far as I'm concerned. So, having said that, we want to dot the i's and cross the t's and do. I did do a quick analysis, and your building is going from 1,275 square feet to 3,388 square feet. So there is a significant rise in the size of the building. Also, your coverage is going when you take in the 1,800 square feet of square footage of your cottages, you're going to be at 5,143 square feet. I'm not saying the site can't handle it, I'm just saying these are the numbers that are being generated. So, with that instruction, are you okay to now proceed on the next application being commercial site plan?
We're fine bringing it as commercial.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I just want to, look, we want to get the best guidance we can. Whether the board considers it commercial or residential doesn't really change the way we present it to the board.
Fine.
I have to say, Mr. Kaufman, I have a feel, I think the setback for pre-existing lots is 30 feet at the road, and I'm assuming that John O'Reilly has designed this to meet the 30-foot setback requirement.
But the question I have for you, if you're coming in with a new building,
Yep.
do you have to meet 50?
No?
No, it's
No?
based on the year the lot was created.
Okay.
So I think.
So
we're-
would you label it? None of the, it
Well, yeah,
wasn't.
no,
Yeah.
this plan is not near being ready.
I
to be submitted.
understand.
It's just- I just
I'm
wanted to
not,
get-
I'm not criticizing it from that standpoint, I'm just happened to notice that it isn't.
Yeah.
So if they're allowed to maintain 30, and then the side yard setbacks are good, then I don't see a lot of site plan changes here necessarily, other than accommodating the larger house. You do have parking that's along the driveway and all that. That should be shown. In other words,
Yeah.
when we're looking at commercial site plan approval, now we have to look at how many parking spaces
Nope,
do you
of
have?
course,
And
of
all of
course.
that. We will be looking at site lighting, perhaps not landscaping unless for some reason it pops up as an issue. But basically, we're going to take the commercial code and put your plan to the review of it. So, okay?
So then, the 64,000, depends on when you're born, the $64,000 question is, do the cottages constitute site coverage? And so, again, I read the bylaw as regulating dwelling size. So, and these aren't dwellings, and, if we're calling it commercial site plan review, we're moving away from residential review anyways, but I would rather have the building inspector, it's his call.
Well, I'm going to go one step further. I
Yeah.
want the town attorney to opine. I really do.
Fair enough.
So what I'm going to suggest is that, Paul, if whatever authorization you need to get from the Board of Selectmen or whatever we have, I want this to go to the town attorney and have them make a decision on this. I don't think I'm qualified, and I don't think any of us on the board are qualified to make that decision.
Well, and I understand that, and I appreciate that, and I think that's the appropriate
Okay.
response. But just, the dynamic that we have here is that the building inspector makes the determination as to how to interpret the zoning code, not the planning board. You write the bylaw, building inspector interprets it, zoning board hears the appeals. So the building inspector will answer this question. I was really coming to you for both feedback, and your feedback is valuable to the building inspector, of course. So depending on what town council says, we're going to have to submit this project to the building inspector for a zoning determination.
Correct.
He has to get to fill out the form. And I'm hoping that the form says you need commercial site plan review. I'll also ask him to determine whether or not the cottages constitute site coverage. Depending on what his answer is, we may well be in front of the zoning board appealing that determination, so that when it gets to you, you understand exactly how to treat the project. And
Right.
So I'm just kind of laying this whole thing out. So this is kind of this is sort of the soft request, then will come the harder request, and then we go. But I think having town council look at the bylaw and determine whether or not it is or isn't site coverage is helpful. And I think town council understanding that the planning board believes, or has
Right.
informally determined that this is a commercial site plan application, not residential, may have some bearing on her decision, so.
Isn't it nice? We're all in agreement.
So far.
I have a question.
Yes.
I think you've uncovered some items with the definitions, which are interesting.
Yep.
But the definition for site coverage is the floor areas of the dwelling, including square footage of any permanently roofed accessory structures.
Right.
If you go to the definition of accessory structure, it's supplemental building used incidental to the principal building. So
That's
under
true.
that, why, I'm just
Because-
asking why
because-
wouldn't these structures contribute as an accessory?
Because these cottages aren't accessory to a single-family dwelling. These cottages compromise the primary non-conforming use of the property. It's not like these cottages just happen to be there because somebody, put it a different way. You build a house, you live in a house, and then you build you might have a garage, you might have a boathouse, you might have things that are accessory and incidental and subordinate to your living in your single-family residence. These cottages are in no way incidental and subordinate to the house itself. They actually constitute the non-conforming use of the property. So when I read the bylaw, and I think I agree with what Paul's saying, I've tested a weakness in the bylaw. But I don't think that residential site plan review bylaw was intended to regulate commercial uses. It was intended to regulate the size of the houses that people build and whatever buildings they build that are accessory to that. So that's kind of my responsibility.
Okay.
So, and town council may disagree. So.
I guess I agree in that if this is not residential, and for commercial, we don't have any thresholds for site coverage, you know.
Right.
But I guess I would look at it like you would still count it as part of as a data point, as part of the commercial, like you would.
No question. There's no question that we would present to the planning board the total floor area of the project and show you where it is. What I'm suggesting is that those cottages don't constitute site coverage as defined in the bylaw for the purposes of the residential density bylaw.
Okay. Well, since we're in commercial, it's irrelevant.
So, I guess a housekeeping thing. So as we've discussed, really the zoning determination is under the purview of the building commissioner.
Correct.
I think this feedback is useful, but it's ultimately his decision. So I guess I would look at it unless this comes back to you in a form where the board doesn't agree with the zoning determination, then I think we might be out of space where we would want legal counsel. But I don't think necessarily we have to do that at the outset.
I'm willing to forego the decision.
And I guess
until we see what comes back to us.
To get really technical about it, they would be kind of like the planning board would be appealing the determination of the building inspector, which is nothing
You don't
wrong
wanna
with
go there.
that, but
No,
it's,
I understand.
yeah.
Let's see where we go.
Well, just to tell you how I see this playing out procedurally, you know, this feedback has been really helpful. You know, and we didn't dig a lot into the details because you don't have a commercial site plan in front of you. What I'm going to do is we're going to prepare the site plan as if it were a commercial application. We're going to submit a narrative and the site plan to the building inspector to form his own opinion as to what relief is required. He says you need a special permit, you need this, you're exceeding site coverage, you need a variance from site coverage, and then we'll get his determination.
Fine.
If he determines that, for example, that the cottages constitute site coverage, and again, I keep using the word cottage, I'm sorry, but I don't know what else to call them. So, if they constitute site coverage, then we'll probably appeal that determination. It may well be that we would ask to not go before this board until we get that resolved.
That's fine.
If the building inspector comes back and says this requires commercial site plan review, the cottages don't constitute site coverage, we'll just apply to the planning board, come in, and you'll treat it like any other commercial application.
We'll deal with
That's
it.
the way I see it happening, Paul.
Yeah, Well, I think either way, even if it ends up residential, the house, even if you don't count the site coverage of the cottages, the house is over the 3,000 square foot.
Right.
So,
You're there anyways.
That's a good point. I forgot to say that. Yeah, I assumed we were coming to you no matter what. I just didn't know which was the better way to.
And I agree. My problem is, I just can't look at this site and ignore the fact that the structures are there. That's just me. I'm sorry. I just, they're there. I can't look at the site and turn my back to the cottages and say, we're only going to deal with the residents in the front.
No, and I don't think you're being asked to.
I know.
All we're saying is, really, this only really comes down to, because frankly, I'm not really overly concerned about whether you're looking this under the standards for approval under commercial or the standards for approval for residential, because ultimately, you're going to want the best project that you can have. And so, there may be a different level of detail for the filing for commercial, and the standards may be a little bit different.
Sure.
It really comes down to whether or not this house has to be reduced in size because the cottage is site coverage. And just so you know, the garage is important, and that's really what's kicking it over. So that's kind of where we are.
Okay.
with this. Yeah, so I think this is very helpful.
It's fun.
last thing,
Yeah,
on the
thanks,
two
Paul.
plans, there's just a discrepancy between the upland.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we haven't asked John to go back and really tighten down the proposed plan.
Yeah,
because I want to get some feedback. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I saw 37,000 square feet, somewhere around there for dry
Yeah, what
land.
happened was his initial plan, he wasn't going to meet, he wasn't including parts of the coastal bank, and, you know,
Oh.
typically, we go to mean high water. He wasn't
Yeah.
going all the way to mean high, so he said, look, please go to mean high water, because that's the land, and he
Okay.
did, so the lot got a little bit bigger.
So
That's
just
fine.
also, I'm glad you brought that up, because we just updated the definition of that. So
We
it's
did.
What is it?
Highest astronomical tide.
Is that capable of being ascertained?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
fine.
It can be located.
Okay, yeah, okay. Wouldn't that be the same as like a 100-year flood elevation or something like that?
No.
No, okay.
And the 100-year flood is actually the 1% annual chance flood. It's
I
not,
don't know how you do your
it's
job.
not it's not a flood every 100 years. It's a 1% chance that you could flood in any given year. at a
Showing
certain
my age.
elevation.
I know,
Okay,
it's
fair
all
enough.
changing.
I'll have John look at that high
Yeah,
section.
it's actually, I think it's actually easier to calculate to that, but I'm not an engineer.
Yeah,
Based on,
It's a black box. I'll have the engineer do it, so.
Okay.
But I didn't know that, Paul. Thank you for telling me so.
Okay.
Thank you all. I mean, this is really helpful.
Good.
I mean, I think we've resolved more in 15 minutes.
We are encouraging applicants to do this more regularly than has been in the past, because I think it saves everybody a lot of time and money. Not us money, but the applicant.
No, it's really helpful, so.
Good. Thank you.
Christine, just one second. Did you want to say anything, Christine? I asked, I said if she wanted to weigh in. She's been
Yeah.
part of this for a long time.
No.
If you want to say something, you can. You don't have to, so.
Just think that the house does need to be rebuilt.
Sure.
When my father built the first part, was the middle part, and we were in there. And then he built the living room, and then he built the two-story, which was 3 bedrooms. It was always 3 bedrooms. And that middle part, my mother would have loved to have a 2-story all the way across, but the middle part wouldn't have sustained it,
Sure.
because my father built it with what he could get right after the war in 1946. And so it's been a wonderful business, and we're into great-grandchildren at this point.
Perfect.
We want to keep it. We're 77 years, and we want to keep it going.
We want you to keep it going, too.
And one thing I neglected to say, we're going to have to go to historic as well. You know, the house is old enough that it'll trigger historic review as well.
Okay. Good luck.
Thank you. From my cousins.
There you go.
Thank you all.
Okay,
All set?
thank you. Okay, our next informal is 720 Schoolhouse Road, preliminary plan review. The applicant is here and has submitted tonight some drawings. And good evening.
Good evening.
Hi. Okay, why don't you tell us just a general overview of what's going on?
Okay, this is my wife Deborah, by the way. And we moved to the Cape about a year ago to care for her dad, who has dementia. He's 91. And after a year, after closing up our house and moving up here and renting in Provincetown, we started to look around and said, we're going to be here for a while. And so we looked at communities to try to see where did we want to stay and bring our family, which is my wife and I, and then her dad and his wife. They've been married 42 years. And we need to set something up that will care for our family. So that's what the whole part of this is, and we fell in love with Eastham.
East Ham.
Eastham.
Right.
Got to say it correctly, that's right. So
I
we
also-
looked around.
I also want to add that my business has to do with parenting and families and things like that, and there's not a lot of that in Provincetown, so
Sure.
this is a better area.
So in our search in towns around, we finally settled on Eastham, and one of the reasons for that was that we found this lot on 720 Schoolhouse Road. And it was in a very eclectic kind of neighborhood with a blend of all different kinds of houses, you know, all around it. So, and I'm a builder, by the way. I've been a builder for 40 years. I've built all over Connecticut. I haven't built here in Massachusetts, but I'm very versed in building, and as it were. So our goal here is to build a structure that is going to take care of, like I said, my family's needs. And the main house is roughly about 2,800 square feet. And we have put on also a garage with an ADU above it. Okay? So the total coverage from what I have read and reading in your bylaws and all the things that I've seen there, our lot size is 34,256 square feet. So at 12%, that means that the maximum house that you could build is 4,110. That's what the calculation comes out for me. So when all of the coverage, and by the way, I've been talking to Paul some, I've been talking to Justin over the weeks that we said, by the way, this all started April 5th for us. In talking to them, I found out about what constituted coverage. And we narrowed this down as best we could. And if you take a look at the plans, do you want to put some things up, or
Sure.
does it make it easier?
Which file would you?
I thought that we can go into orientation and things of that, of the lot, but just knowing that it's 4,100 square feet, okay? If you, it's the aerial view. If you put the aerial view up, right? You see those?
Hold on a second.
This is, this is the site plan here. And what I tried to do with the house was keep it where it is going to be 30 feet, even though it's a lot that was built in the 1950s and it only requires 25, the current zones are for 30 feet away, so I did that on the side lot, okay? There's plenty of distance in all the other directions, okay, for this. What's really cool about this lot from an orientation, I've been listening to the presentations here and sort of smiling and saying, okay, well, okay, I think I got that one, or I think I did this, or I think I did that. The front yard is wooded, but do you see the aerial ones?
Yeah, hold
So
on,
that you
let
could-
me,
You could see that? It says 0 aerial. Your photos,
You bought this nifty little thing, but it doesn't work on your
yeah,
screen.
yeah.
Existing property photos?
No, not exist, yes, it's in existing.
I just put all the files you had. Aerial.
So at the beginning of the list, it should say 0, and then it will say
Okay.
aerial.
This
See it?
one?
That one, yeah. Okay, so this is Schoolhouse Road. This is the lot, and that's the existing 720 square foot home. So the driveway, this is a long driveway that goes back to this house behind. Okay, that's behind. There's a driveway, as you can see, a dirt right there.
Mhm.
Can you see it?
No.
But all of this is wooded, okay? It's deeply wooded. And the orientation of the house, north is this way, right? And for use of solar, it is good to have your house is going to be facing north to south, front to back. so that the broader part of your house can travel the east to west, right, direction, so that you get great sun over the course of things. So in this particular case here, I wanted to orient the house this way, which makes the back of our house go to no one here, and the front of our house go to no one there, okay? And the edge of the drive, where the garage is oriented somewhat towards the street, but the house is predominantly tucked all behind the woods there, okay? So you really don't get to see it that much when you look at the orientation, and we don't have to do much clearing in this place because it's cleared. So what we were looking for is further input from planning here with regard to what additional things we could do. In our home here, this is going to be 3 bedrooms, which includes the one for the ADU as well. We have a master suite on the first floor and a master suite on the second floor.
So the second floor is while we're young, and the first floor is for when we get older.
Well, it's also going to accommodate Dad and his wife, and as care progresses, one of the things that I don't see done enough, and I have incorporated it into my way of doing things, is that if you've all been on stairs in homes, a lot of them have 8-inch rises, 7 3/4-inch rises. As you get older, that's tough. Well, if you're going to have 9 1/4, 9.5-inch treads, right? That's a difficult thing. You have to turn sideways to go downstairs a lot. Well, I didn't want to build a home that was like that. I wanted to have a home that had 12-inch treads, and I wanted to have 7-inch rises. But that requires you need a longer run, right? And so it takes up more space. If you want to have hallways that can accommodate a wheelchair, and or doorways there, like, it takes up more space.
Like the
Right?
kitchen island, you can fit a wheelchair all the way around it, so.
So this was designed as, I'm 68.
You're not supposed to tell a woman's age.
We don't have to know her.
And knock on wood, I'm going to be healthy for, a long time, but we have to prepare for what can come down the road. So I would love to have your input and discussion about this with regard to what we are proposing. And I will tell you, we're supposed to close on this house June 28th.
Okay.
That's what the thing is, okay? We're supposed to close on this house. We have a contingency that requires us to get a building permit in order for this to go through. I mean, for this to happen.
You can't get a building permit by June 20th. We have to schedule a public hearing.
I
So
understand that.
I don't know what to, first of all, it looks like a reasonable presentation for the lot, okay? It's unusual, it has the ADU, but that's fine. You are going to have to meet residential site plan approval requirements, and in order to do that, we're going to be looking at parking, lighting, walkways, all of the things that go on a residential lot, especially with the ADU. I assume you're going to have some more than just 2-car parking to accommodate your
There's the
uses.
2-car garage, and then there is parking right outside the garage.
So I guess
Excuse me, what are walkways?
where you walk from the driveway to the house, the front
So it's
door.
not like a sidewalk on the street?
No.
Okay.
Internal. We're talking everything internal on this lot. So if Paul can give you a listing of the requirements. We can waive some of them if they're logical to be waived, such as, it looks like the grading on the site is fairly flat, so we might waive a grading site plan. It's possible.
It is fairly flat.
You have the vegetation in the front, so we may waive a landscape plan in the front. But we're going to look at lighting, and we're going to look at neighbor's house location, and we're going to look at headlights coming into the lot, and is anybody going to see them on an adjoining lot? And if they are you going to mitigate them with some landscaping so that the headlights don't shine onto a neighbor's front door? You know, that kind of thing.
I understand. We
So-
don't have any of those issues with this one.
So I guess the question is, I don't know how you're ever going to be able to close with a permit in hand. You're going to have to take the risk, it seems. And Paul, it's just not possible by then, is it?
Well, if I could just pause for
Yeah.
a second, I just want to make sure, so what is the, what's the size of the proposed house?
41, garage, ADU, and the main house, 4,100.
And the size of the lot is?
So the house, I'm just looking at this, the 2,868 is the main house?
Correct.
Okay, and then the garage, and it puts it at 4, okay, all right, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, that's what does
So
it.
does that meet the new
size of the
code?
garage is,
Yeah, it's,
He's under the 4110. Is 4110 the right number for this size lot?
yeah, it's the,
Okay.
that's the 12% you calculate.
correct.
All right.
So
fine.
that's the absolute max. that
Right.
He's under it, but then the site plan review is triggered because it's over 3,000 square.
I agree. So that's your problem. I can't see how you're going to have a permit in hand. Now, you say it's a requirement of who to have a permit in hand before you buy this? Who's making that requirement?
The lender.
It's not going to happen.
But
It just, you know, I don't know what to tell you. And I'd like to help you, but there's no way we can hold a public hearing and have all the things that we have, you don't even have a full plan yet, and to have everything we need and then hold a public hearing where the neighbors can come in and express, as you saw tonight, their concerns on what's going on in the neighborhood, and all of that by June. It can't happen. So my question to you is, knowing now that it can't happen by June, what are you going to do? I'm asking the question because I don't know.
Building, an actual building permit issued?
A building permit issued, but
Mm.
like I said, there's, you know, that is a requirement that we need to have. There's not going to be a closing until that is done, so it will just have to be delayed. But what I would need to know is, okay, listen, I'm new to the Cape, what those processes are that have to go through this, I want to do it. I just would love, what do we need to do?
Well, I think
So-
Paul's the best source for that information. If you meet with Paul, he'll give you the application, he'll give you the site plan requirements. He will go through with you, to the best of his ability, what he thinks might be waived on our part, what waivers we may issue you in order to help things along. But the reality is, we must hold a public hearing. The reality is, plans have to be in a month before the public hearing. The reality is, there's months that are going to go by here, and I don't want you to have expectations that can't be fulfilled. So knowing that, you're going to have to make a decision, I guess. Will the lender extend the commitment, or whatever else has to happen? Will the seller extend the time to close?
Well, we just
I
have
don't
to-
know.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out.
Okay.
But here's the question really from me, is that these requirements, Paul, that we're talking about, it's like saying, okay, you got to put your sidewalks on the plan, right?
Right.
So there's a list of things that you'd like, and you'd like lighting, I mean,
Any,
gonna
How
have,
can we get a hold of the list, so?
we have those already.
Oh. Okay.
Sconces on the outside of the house. and
down,
that's it.
down.
Right, downcast.
Shielded, that kind of.
I understand about that.
That kind of stuff.
I think maybe the board, so this is the plan as it is now. I don't know if the board's comfortable kind of going through, like, based on what you're seeing, what kind of things you would be not requiring. So,
My problem with that is I can't make that decision until I go out to the site and see where the neighbors' houses are and things like that. I just not comfortable committing what I won't require until I actually walk the property and get a feel for what's going to happen and the impact on neighbors.
I can
Well,
tell
I'd
you
say
one thing, that for the driveway and the lights, if you follow that line straight across, that neighbor has this really big fence, a
Okay.
wooden fence.
But see,
there.
that's what you'll show on the plan, and then we'll see it in the field, and then we'll know, yeah, okay, we don't have to worry about that anymore. But I can't tell from looking at this whether that exists. So that's your issue, that's the issue mainly. I mean, what do you think, Paul?
We've
I
tried
mean-
very hard to make sure that we address the neighbors so that they'll be
Right.
comfortable.
And I'm sure when we finally get out there, because we're going to want to see the house staked on the lot, and that's not done yet, and so you need a surveyor, or maybe you're capable of finding the property corners and staking the house out. All I'm saying is there is a significant amount of work that's got to be done before we could ever say yes. And I think you need to, if I were you, I would get an extension from the seller and get extension from the bank and make sure you've got 90 days to get all this stuff done, because I can't see it happening much less than that.
So you're saying like from today, 90 days, we should
Well,
figure for planning?
that's if everything worked right.
I mean, we have to go tell them that we'd like to extend it to a certain date, so.
Paul,
what should we
am I
tell them?
too short in 90 days?
Well, I can just double check the,
Check the calendars and see what we got.
Frustrates me because that's what I used to do. We would, it's a total lot, crazy.
so the next,
There's no risk.
the next meeting is June 26th. The filing deadline to have all this would be May 26th. That's
Which they can't do.
getting close. And so then we'd be to meeting date of July 17th with a filing deadline of June 17th.
All right, let's say they did that. And
But
let's-
if I was to get whatever these requirements were, property staked, put the things on the plans, I don't take long to do things. I did all of this,
All right.
right?
If you could do it by May, what's the deadline?
26.
If you could get all that into Paul by May 26th, sufficient with the application and the fees, so that we could schedule, assuming Paul feels comfortable with what he sees, a public hearing for June.
June 26th?
So if that happened, the hearing would be June 26th, assuming everything, there was no issues, and it was approved on the 26th. The approval, a decision letter gets drafted, there's a 10-day appeal period, and then it gets filed with the registry, and then one of the standard condition, and then after that, you could get your building permit basically the day after. You do it at your own risk.
Like in a few weeks
with the-
after the meeting or something.
So
Yeah,
by
a few
the
weeks.
end of July, you could have your building permit, under ideal conditions.
Understood.
Now,
And I would think so the list of items for that site plan, the checklist is on the application, but a landscape plan, we request a plan and/or a narrative. So again, this is kind of like if the landscape's going to be, intact, not change, so maybe a narrative would be sufficient as opposed to going out and getting a whole new landscape plan. The lighting plan, we really don't require an actual plan, although on the Beach Plum.
yeah, I know.
But normally, it's really just a spec sheet of any of the exterior lights that you're gonna have. You don't need like an actual lighting plan. And we just require that they're down shielded, down facing. And so I think mostly it's just adding on, you have the setbacks, it's adding on any of the driveways, any of the walkways where the septic's on there already.
Waterline septic design.
It's on there.
Not just a box. Oh, yeah, you already have it, yeah.
The
I
last
saw
page,
The last
16.
page.
Right.
He has a septic design.
So I think you probably have pretty much everything you need, and then, like I said, just some of those other things, it's not nearly, you don't really need it on the plan, and then if you get through it, and there's just stuff that we don't think is pertinent, or you can make the call of,
Okay.
not gonna get it, you could ask for a waiver from having to supply.
Yeah, I
that.
think-
We moved during this time also, during this interim time here to get the town's meter box installed, and we decommissioned the well that was there on the property during this time. We've been moving.
Right.
you know, to,
Well, I just don't want you to get caught, that's
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
That's my
no,
concern.
I understand, but
Okay,
got to try.
I think it's, all I can tell you is I think it's possible,
Understood,
okay?
understood. Any
But
questions?
that deadline has to be met for the submission,
Okay,
so. If you work with Paul,
okay.
he's a good guy.
No, I appreciate it.
All right,
And-
so
and-
assuming you do that, we will see you next month. We do not have to take an action tonight. This is just informal.
Not-
Yeah.
Sorry, not to labor the whole
Yeah.
thing, but just while we're here, do you want to go over any of the elevations or anything, just on the design, just because that?
Yeah,
Well,
well, that's,
unfortunately, this is the first time we've seen it, but,
No, I mean, just, but this was the opportunity just to get.
Oh, I see.
Kind of gut reactions on this, because then that will speed things up, you know, if you're not
It's
hearing
true.
anything, or at least
true.
give you a preview.
okay. And I also have it in 3D.
Oh, this, okay, I can bring that up.
It goes all around.
All right, so I guess just, I'll bring this, if you want to talk to this, and I can bring the
Sure.
3D one up
Sure.
if you want.
So this is the front of the house. It has a farmer's porch that's there, and in the orientation of what you're looking at, obviously the garage is to the right, that's what is there, but the living room is down on the right, and there's the master bathroom. The master bathrooms are on the left side, first and second floor. But, and that's the rear. The ADU is on the left. And again, we're looking at the first floor, the kitchen is what we're looking at. That's, that door there is an access to the basement.
okay?
So it's a covered area that's there. And the porches that come off of the bedroom and the dining room.
I like the fact that you hid the garage doors from the street.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Worked out.
Do you want to, you had a 3D rendering?
Yes. And then you'll see, and it says Brandon.
This one?
What does it say?
3D video proposal?
Yep, yep.
I haven't tried the video. Hopefully it'll work.
I haven't done a presentation with the audio visual there. So, yeah, this is just to show you around. This will come around.
Honestly, I get so excited when I look at this. Well, I'm a visual person.
East Dam has mountains.
Yeah, look at that. I go skiing here a lot.
It cost me to bring those mountains in.
You're gonna have to get curtains for that bedroom down there, though. You see the bed.
Amazing what they,
Yeah.
So you're going to build the mountains as well as the house?
Well, if the neighbors approve.
Okay.
It's a very elaborate landscaping plan.
But I thought it could be a narrative. So
Okay.
just say, we're gonna build some mountains.
Right.
Where's the additional parking for the ADU?
Can you pause that for a second?
Yeah, you can park it.
I just wanted to say that one of the neighbors is in that direction. this
Right.
way, And the other neighbor is in,
Yeah.
turned it.
Oh, sorry. I thought, where do you want it here?
Either way, it doesn't matter. But, so the neighbor comes as facing this angle right here, and the other neighbor is facing that angle over there. So none of our window walls are facing any of the neighbors
Okay.
directly.
So the narrowest part of the house is facing.
If you go back to the site plan, then we could
That
talk
whole
about that.
area is like, would they call that a K-turn?
Yeah,
It's
they
like-
were calling it a K-turn, yeah.
And the front of the house faces that wooded area, the upper
Yes.
left-hand corner.
And the
Correct.
garage would go,
Way it's
I mean,
situated
the
on the
driveway would go
property.
up the side.
I understood that the neighbor to the left, as you're facing the house from the street, is your town manager.
Oh,
That's
Okay.
what I was told by a neighbor. Okay, so all of this area here is actually substantial for being able to, to park. That people can come in and park right here.
But then you can't get out of the garage.
This distance here, this is 30 feet?
Yeah, so a car is 20 feet.
Yeah.
So if you have a car in that area, the garage, cars in the garage cannot get out of the garage. I'm not saying you can't have them move the car, but it's, you may want to look at, is it feasible for you to have two interior parking spaces and everything else blocks the driveway? I don't know. You may want to create additional pads someplace so that somebody can park without blocking the garage doors.
What's this dimension where the driveway is closest to the lot line there? I can't read that.
It should be,
Well-
it's way more than 6 feet.
Okay,
It's,
all right.
it's more like 10 or something.
All right, that's fine.
I think
That
with
was-
the ADU, we're going to look at additional parking from the standpoint of practicality, that's all. I think it's going to be needed someplace, I think you should plan for it, that's all.
Yeah.
Because this is not just a single-family home, it does have the ADU. When we have an ADU, we look for features that, not necessarily one particular individual, but that ADU may continue beyond that need, and
Correct.
people are going to have cars, so you need to plan for it, and it has to be part of site plan approval.
Okay.
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 Okay. Well, board members, I'm not going to poll because this is all informal, but are we comfortable with where we've gone with this? If they can get it in and try to help them and get this thing resolved? Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. That's
All
as
right.
best you're going to get tonight.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you. No,
Good luck.
I appreciate it. It's why we came here, just to.
Okay.
And Paul was our advisor. He said, you should go there and try to do this. And I said,
All right, Dave, it's
"Let's
good to
do
see
it."
you back. I've got to go check out Lorraine, I'm really.
Good to see you. No, go, go, go,
Thank you
go,
so
go,
much.
go, go. No, go.
Thank you for your time.
Okay.
I'm jealous of your tan, especially where you got it.
Are we adjourning, or are we doing this other stuff?
There's nothing else. Paul, we don't have any minutes in the packet.
No.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'm making a motion to adjourn.
I seconded, all in favor, aye. Goodbye.
Aye.